Welcome to the Embodied Mystic Podcast, where we explore the path of feminine awakening and luscious womanhood. Together we'll be diving into topics like sacred sexuality, feminine embodiment, spiritual healing, and soulful relationships. I'm your host, Tamar Raphael, tantric mentor and Aries hype girl, here to guide you back to the temple of your body and fall in love with being a woman. I look forward to journeying together. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's a grey late afternoon here in Bali, and today I was just reflecting on some of the past interviews that I have done with other people, and I remembered this gorgeous conversation that Laura and I had almost a year ago now, where she was interviewing me around goddess energy. So we were talking about goddess energy, how to really tap into that frequency and embody that divine feminine energy. So I had another listen this afternoon and I just had to share it with you here. I loved this conversation. I loved the flow of energy between us. Laura is such a wonderful human being and host, and our conversation was so much fun. I'm sure there will be many more in the future, but for now, here is our conversation.
So good morning, or good evening in your case. Welcome the lovely Tamar, who is in Bali. Tamar is an embodied tantric practitioner and also what was the other title, Tamar?
Sacred sexuality coach.
Sacred sexuality coach. We've had to do a couple of takes. We're going to try again. But I've brought Tamar on this morning to have a chat really about the archetype of the goddess. Because as some of you know, I have a program coming up soon, The Goddess, the Badass and the Boss, to look at these three female archetypes, which to me is like a really fascinating way to better understand the different elements of womanhood and how we can really learn to utilize them in different ways to expand what is possible for us, to create a life which feels more aligned, and so on and so forth. And I wanted to invite Tamar on because you represent to me so clearly the embodiment of the goddess. So when we were talking in our previous recording that we've now started again, Tamar, you referred to this goddess presence as a frequency. So could you just sort of recap on what you were saying about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I just want to thank you so much, Laura, for your beautiful words and for inviting me to be here. So thank you. Oh, yeah. So, when I kind of feel into the archetype of the goddess, and I feel like this in itself, it's like feel into, it's about bringing this it's like this connection to the divine, this divine spark down right into our bodies. It's like, how do we as women connect with this archetype of goddess? It's about like, what is it that makes us feel magic? Like where in our life can we connect to magic and wonder? Like where can we really feel that and experience those things, wonder, magic, awe, pleasure, joy, all these things which for me, they connect to like this spark, you know, this like little twinkle in someone's eyes, this like je ne sais quoi, like that, like what is that little thing? It's about like, yeah, really feeling in our body, like what is it that makes us happy to be alive? Yeah.
I loved what you said about the goddess somehow being a representation of this divine spark, you know, the divine power that created us in the first place, and how do we activate that frequency in a world where, you know, you were talking about joy and pleasure and sensuality and embodiment and things like that. And it's like, you know, for so many women, they are just running around like multitasking, you know, trying to get their kids to school through the gates on time before the teacher starts shouting at them, you know, trying to get to work on time, trying to work out how they're going to cope with energy bills going up or whatever else is on their mind. You know, it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of women to really even contemplate, you know, what is this archetype and how is it relevant to my life and how can I bring it in? And it's just, as you say, it's beginning with that remembrance that we are divine, that we have a connection to something higher, to source energy. And then how do we live in a way where that somehow flows through us? And I know for myself that when I do my practices, my meditation, my sound work, whatever it is that I do to kind of bring myself into alignment, I definitely feel myself going out into the world with a very different frequency, you know, and that's why it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, what you were sharing about the way that most women are living, I can really relate to that, like from another time in my life. And I feel that it's so much about stress, you know, and like there's the stress that we're aware of. And then there's like this kind of like, it's like this underlying tension that so many of us like not only are carrying, but like we're actually like creating for ourselves moment by moment through the thoughts, you know, like the looping thoughts, the belief systems, the weight of the things that we feel we need to do, and not just do, but be. And there's almost like this kind of, I don't know, like this caricature of like femininity, which is like the layers of makeup and the clothes and the behaviors and all these things, which is just like, like this is not like our divine nature. And our divine nature is, and like the goddess, you know, like this goddess frequency is like what we find we are already. Like we're already embodying that when we like strip back the layers and learn to like release these also these layers of like chronic tension and stress that's living in our body. I feel so much of like what is like the goddess flowy, pleasure, joy-filled, that's all under the surface of all the other stuff that we've like built on top.
Yeah. And, you know, that whole kind of like rushing around society that many of us are living in, that you've, you know, at least to a large extent at the moment removed yourself from. And I think environment is a key factor, isn't it? You know, when we're in a city, when we're in a sort of busy urban environment where everybody else is rushing around, it takes that extra self-awareness and that discipline, like in my case, to keep coming into the practices before I go back into the city, before I go back into a busy college. You know, how do I bring myself into that goddess space first thing in the morning? You know, because as I said, it really does shift the the trajectory of the day for me when I do it. And one of the little things that I do is, it sounds a bit weird, but when I get to work, I always hope that no one else wants to get in the lift with me, because if I go in the lift by myself, there's a mirror. And what I do if I'm on my own in the lift is I go right up to the mirror and I look myself right in the eye and I'll say something like, I fucking love you. You're brilliant. And I'll say, have an amazing day. And then I'll give myself like a little wink in the mirror. And then I'll come out of the mirror smiling. And then the first person that I see, that then ignites something in them. You know, it's this like, it's like a ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And yeah, it's like, well, what is the goddess? Like, what does that mean? Like, the goddess is love. You know, the goddess is love. The goddess is like living from our heart. And yeah, by connecting to yourself in that really, really loving way, it's like you're channeling something. Like, it's not just higher, like it's within you, and that you're connected to, and like choose, like, shower yourself in that, and it ripples out. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I certainly noticed myself that when my stress levels go higher, the tendency that I have is to cut off from myself. And that's an ironic thing, isn't it? Because it's by plugging back into the goddess. And when we talk about the goddess, we literally just mean like the inner being, the divine inner being, the presence with ourselves, even if that literally looks like saying hello to yourself in the mirror in the lift and for 10 seconds smiling at yourself and telling yourself that you're amazing. Like, that is connecting with the goddess energy of I'm with me. Because, you know, we were talking earlier about a conflict that occurred yesterday, you know, in the work environment that I'm in. And when I was looking at the people involved in that conflict, I was thinking, I very much doubt that any of these women, bless them, you know, have connected with themselves today, or for that matter this week, or for that matter this month, or even for years, you know, because when we go out into the world out of alignment, it's very often because we've just lost connection with the goddess, right? The inner compass.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And yeah, it's like one aspect of the goddess is the divine mother. And it's like, it's that divine mother that's holding, our child self, the part of us who wobbles, the part of us who, like, you know, struggles and, you know, wants to cry and throw things and feels overwhelmed. And this is the part of us that is so often kind of going, not just like unmet, like we're not really, most of us not really meeting this part with full presence, but we're not actually like holding and loving that part and like, connecting with all parts within us. The divine mother, again, you know, these sound like very illustrious terms, don't they? But, you know, again, to ground it, it's something as simple as, you know, me saying to myself, if I feel overwhelmed at work or in life in general, just saying like, we're okay. When I say to myself a lot, we are okay, not I am okay, we are okay, because who is the we, you know, it's all of the parts. It's the inner child, it's the divine mother, it's the busy, stressed woman. Like, it's all of the parts. And there's something very reassuring to me about using that plural, you know, we. So, you know, I think what I see in the world is that where we don't claim the parts internally, the parts, i.e. the wounded child or whatever it is, the part that feels unseen, unheard, unmet, sort of lashes out externally or looks externally for solutions, which is another side of the same coin, you know, rather than having that wisdom to know how to ground it back in, right? Right. Yeah. All these different parts of ourselves. And yeah, it's like when you say like, you say like we are fine, or like we are good, or like whatever it is. Yeah. It's like the family constellation that's living inside of us. And yeah, it's like connecting again with like with the goddess. We're connecting with like the feminine aspect of the divine, and that is so much connected to like family, the heart, caring, loving, and like yeah, the mother. Like these pieces are also deeply connected with the heart. There's like our body, which is really important. We were talking a little bit about embodiment before. I don't know if we with the feeling. Yeah, this is like being in the body. And then there's like the heart, the love, the care, the empathy, the compassion. This is so important. And it starts with ourselves.
Yeah. And I think like so many women, again, it's the programming we've had, but we've been conditioned that our value is when we extend the caring outwards to other people. We mother children, we mother students, we mother our partners very often. We extend the mothering out. And many of us just have never learned the value of, or even how to extend that within before we even begin to try to extend it out. It's society has rewarded us for the giving. And for me, a big part of the goddess is turning that giving back on ourselves. Like, can I receive from myself? Can I receive from source? Can I receive from others? That's how the goddess, one of my coaches, Tasha Wall, talks a lot about living from overflow. And I understand what she means, and it's not something that I've yet fully tapped into, but I definitely feel like the more we cultivate the goddess, the feeling present, connected to source part of ourselves, the more we can learn to live from this overflow. And I feel that from you. I don't know if that's something you resonate with, but
yeah, thank you. I do resonate. Like, I do resonate with that. And it's like, like when I feel into what that means for me, it's like, in this moment, it's like I feel a connection to my womb space, like to my yoni, or like to my vagina, like a more like everyday word for it. It's like I feel connected to her as like a center of gravity. Like I feel that part of me. I feel my heart, and there's an openness and a softness that can only be accessed through a releasing of tension, a releasing of tension, and a releasing of like all the other stuff that we hold there, that like blocks these, that like blocks our access to like the good stuff. Because it's there, like it really is there. And I honestly, Laura, like I was never in a place of like even like being able to give from not being in overflow, because I was holding so much pain and tension in my body that I was totally like trapped inside myself, and I really couldn't access good feeling in my body. Like I couldn't really access like pleasure in my body. And I really want to share that. Because, I can imagine that many women can relate. So like, I wasn't even in a place to give, which is why I feel now it's like, like to be able to like give from this place of overflow, it's truly like such a gift for me, that I feel like I genuinely can give. And, you know, there are times when I do, like, you know, I'm not perfect. Like, I do definitely give from a place of like not complete, you know, completely having like all myself juiced up but it's so much easier than it was. And usually when I connect to that channel of like giving and pouring, like I'm not giving from like my own limited capacity. It's like I'm tapping in to something bigger. Like it's this, it's like this divine, it's this divine frequency of love and pleasure. And just by opening that intention of giving, it's like it flows through.
So how did you, this is the $1 million question that people might be curious about. How did you transition, Tamar, from this place of like carrying the tension that you referred to in your body that meant that there was no way that you could give from that expansive place because you were not able to access even those, you know, higher vibrational feelings in your body of pleasure and love and whatever? How did you transition from that holding of tension to this beautiful embodied, I feel almost like you've got this lotus flower energy of just radiant openness, and I'm fascinated to know, how did that come about?
Firstly, like I just love that the lotus has come through. It's like such a gorgeous symbol, actually, of like spiritual enlightenment. And I feel for women especially, like we need to go through our body. Like if we want to go on a spiritual path, us as women, we need to connect with our body. And the lotus is a plant that like I work intimately with, the blue lotus. So I have been on quite the healing journey that's kind of like snaked its way through everything from like, you know, the mental health system and a lot of therapy and like all the like holistic stuff. But really like what's the most important actually is that we work with our bodies, you know, like we can do years of therapy if we want, like therapy is really, really great, but actually like all of these tensions and these blockages, it's like in our society, we are so used to like talking. We're very in our head and our minds. And actually, like, our bodies hold such an incredible, like, oracle. It's like an oracle, and we don't even need to connect with our minds to do the work with our bodies. So, like, how to go from being really, like, tense, in pain, feeling very like stuck and rigid, stuck in like fear. It's through the body. So like working with our body, moving, learning how to move and like moving without agenda. So like free movement, moving like where we feel like we're not being observed, where we feel safe to actually really feel ourselves and like connect to ourselves in the moment and ask like, what is my, like, how do I want to move? And just like exploring our bodies through movement, through dancing. And it's very important that it's like non-choreographed. So we connect to like what's real, like what's alive. And we actually begin to like feel the tension and feel the stuckness. And you know what? Like it doesn't feel very goddessy doing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It hurts.
Yeah.
You know, it hurts.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, the way we learn to feel the pleasure is by first being brave enough to feel the pain and the stuckness and
Amen.
feeling it, feeling our pain, feeling our grief, feeling our rage, all of it.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned earlier that the spark that you see in some people's eyes, right? It's like you just know when the goddess is on in someone. It's as you say, it's a frequency, and that frequency shows in the eyes. And for me, there's a clearness, there's a clarity in the eyes when women have really done the work. And we talk about really doing the work, and sometimes I think people don't know what that means. But I think it's exactly what you've just said. It's like, in order to access these higher frequencies, love, joy, pleasure, sensuality, freedom, sovereignty, the gateway, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you perceive it, but the gateway to that is invariably, am I willing to first feel? And am I willing to feel whatever is there, because a lot of us want to quite naturally avoid the uncomfortable feelings and enjoy the good feelings, and it doesn't work like that. I think Brené Brown once said, you cannot selectively numb certain emotions and feel the opposite emotion. You can't numb sadness and feel joy. You use the sadness as a portal to release what needs releasing, to make space for the joy. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like a key tantric perspective is that like everything is a portal to the divine, everything. And actually, like this principle of like going through the portal of pain and like finding ourselves in pleasure on the other side. It's like this magic carpet kind of ride. This is like actually the exact journey that we go through in one of the modalities that I do in my bodywork, which is called tantric body de-armoring. So we literally like work with the tension and the pain in like the actual muscle tissues. We feel, like the client, my client feels like what's coming up when we work with this part of the body, like what's coming up emotionally. Is there like tension? Is there pain? Which like there is. Because we're working with like the places in the body where we store that. And it's like the most exquisite journey, Laura, because they meet that, they meet whatever's there, like be it grief, be it anger, be it like whatever. And then on the other side of that, like when they've really like to the depth of what's there and excavated like all the muck, like all the shit, there's just pleasure, like relief and relaxation and pleasure in the very same place. Like I'm just holding a spot on their body and it literally alchemizes.
Wow.
Rage, grief, any of these things, and it's melts.
It's incredible work. It's incredible work that you're doing, and it's such courageous work, isn't it? To choose to go into the body. So I'm doing a program at the moment with Melanie Ann Leyer called Femme Fatale, which is all about, that is one of her signature programs, which is all about being a woman and all the different facets of womanhood. She covers the mother wound, the sister wound, the baby goddess, the inner child, all these archetypes get covered on that program. And she has a woman called Nicole, who's part of the Alpha Femme team, who does breathwork practices. So in the very first opening session, Nicole led us through a breathwork practice. And it was really interesting because Melanie came on. And of course, when Melanie comes on the camera, there's 444 women already there, 555, 1,500. And all these women are flocking. But when Nicole comes on and says, right, ladies, we're now going to go into a breathwork practice, you just see the numbers coming down because people are like, whoa, I want to listen to Melanie giving me some truth while I just sit here having a nice, cup of tea, glass of wine, packet of Maltesers. And it's like, no, we're going to go into something painful here. And Nicole said, be mindful if your mind is now telling you that you don't have time for this or you're going to come back to it later. Your mind will be very crafty at telling you all the reasons why now isn't a good time. And sure enough, my mind told me the same thing. My mind was like, oh, I can't do this now. I'll come back to this tomorrow. Yeah. And I didn't come back to it for a few days because I know breath work can be really quite challenging for me.
Yeah.
But I came back to it several days later and I was like, right, I'm ready to do this now. And I just find breath work unbelievable because, there you are for 10 minutes, just literally breathing. Well, she had us breathing into the belly, into the heart, and then release, like a sort of 3-part breath work practice. And yeah, after a few minutes, shaking was coming through my body, wailing, releasing, cramping, you just think, holy shizzle, those practices just crack you open because you don't even realize you're walking around carrying this trauma, these triggers in your body until you lay down and consciously decide to release something. And that's why, coming back to this idea of the goddess work is not all smelling roses, in an orchard and frolicking through fields, is it? It's hard as well.
Oh my God. Absolutely. I'm a breathwork practitioner as well. So I love that you brought it in because it's like, ooh, yeah, what's the saying? It's like no rainbow without rain, no rainbow without rain, no lotus without the mud. And I teach about pleasure and I'm working with pleasure and the body and sensuality. And when people want to come into that work, they think they see the end, the end result. And it's like, oh, the end result is beautiful and it is sexy and it is dripping. And it's like, but we have to go
through hell and back together
into the trenches because it's everyone is a radiant, glowing goddess, but there's stuff covering that.
Yeah.
And it's the stuff that's covering that's actually a lot of these defense mechanisms, which is what they are, they're walls that have been put up there for protection, and they were put up there for good reason.
Yeah.
They were those walls were erected for a very good reason, to protect us from something that hurt and that we didn't have the resources to deal with at the time. But there comes a time in our lives where we've got to be willing to look at those things and willing to go to those places if we want to connect to this goddess, this divine essence, which is really the highest expression of who we can be as women walking on this earth. But we don't get to be the highest without going to the darkest. And it's pleasure and pain are one, but it's a spectrum.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because if you look at a little child, let's say you look at a little girl aged 3 or 4, they are so in their goddess energy, right? They're so in their bodies. They're so alive. Their eyes are so bright. That life is is awe striking to them, right? Like they are in this place of wonder. You mentioned the word awe and wonder, you know, and what happens over the years is a disconnection from that which we innately are. And I think I really like what you said about, you know, it's becoming the goddess or rediscovering the goddess. It's not about becoming somebody different. It's about becoming who we actually came here to be when we strip away these layers of conditioning, trauma, fear. You know, when we release these frequencies from our body, that radiant energy can't not come back, because that's the essence of who we are, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And like children, I believe deeply that children are our teachers. Like children are like in terms of time, closer to source.
Much closer, yeah.
They're closer to source. And actually, like, there is genius in the way that children move their bodies and express themselves. And like, for example, when I like fall over, like when I trip up and I hurt myself, I let myself cry. Like, it's like the first thing that comes to me is like my inner child is like, oh, I fell. And like there are tears that come to my eyes, and I used to suppress that.
Yeah.
I think many of us do. It's certainly what I used to do. I was like, no, I can't cry. I'm an adult. But actually, like what I've learned is that by suppressing that natural reaction, I'm actually like keeping that pain and that sadness and like the hurt of that experience with me. And it seems like a very silly little example, but like,
not at all. Because when we fall, you know, when the child falls, that is a trauma. And the young child knows that they need it. They don't know consciously with their brain. They know with their body that they need to release that trauma so it doesn't stay with them. And they do it impeccably. But then they get talked out of it by adults saying, that's enough, don't cry, have a lollipop or whatever, you know. And then, as you say, it's a whole process of relearning later in womanhood, if we choose to reclaim our essence. You know, fuck it. Like I cry at work on a regular basis, you know. And again, there was a time when I would have like choked it back and just been like, Laura, this is mortifying. You're at work, you're at the photocopier, it's not okay, you've got to teach in 5 minutes, like pull yourself together. But that kind of language is just so not helpful. And now if it comes, it comes. If I need to cry, I need to cry. And it passes through so gracefully, so quickly, so easily when we allow it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm.
There was a little girl yesterday at the tram stop. She was about 3. And of course, everyone else it's early in the morning, it's freezing cold, the sun's shining, everyone else is head down on a smartphone, you know, oblivious to where they are. And this little girl is eagerly counting, she's sort of clocking all the birds and commenting quite loudly on what the birds are doing to her mother. And there was a pigeon on the track. And the little girl suddenly leapt up off the bench and she went, pigeon, fly away, because she knew the tram was coming and she was like really worried that the pigeon was going to die. And she just leapt up and she was shouting it. And her mother was like, shh, shh, you know. And I was like, oh my God, let the child express herself. You know, it's just so sweet. This manky looking pigeon. And her whole heart was invested in its survival, you know.
Oh, yeah. And it's like this, like the playfulness, the innocence, like the genuine care for that pigeon. Like, yeah, these are all qualities that are like deeply connected with the goddess, and like, you know, even like distilling it down to like this human level of like what actually is like attractive as qualities to men. Like if like, you know, if we're into men, For example, like just bringing it into this topic, because it's like, yeah, this goddess thing is like, okay, first and foremost, it's for us, but also like I think most women like want to be seen as goddesses, like to our partners.
Yeah.
Like these qualities specifically, like the playfulness, the innocence, the expressiveness, especially the expressiveness. This is like what we squash.
Absolutely.
And like, it's so fascinating that like these are the very qualities that actually men find super attractive in women.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because there was a girl on the tram yesterday. I keep talking about the tram. It's just relevant to my life, but a lot happens on that tram. This girl got on and I was just fascinated because she'd had her lips done and they were absolutely huge. I mean, disproportionate to the face. You know, it was very clear that they were not natural. And she was with her boyfriend, and I couldn't stop looking. I couldn't stop looking at these lips. I was like, wow. Like, I was really trying to get into the mindset of like, because I know so many young women now are having things done, you know, and rearranging their face to be attractive to men. And, you know, I'm not saying inherently that's necessarily wrong, you know, each to their own, but it's becoming increasingly endemic that younger women are changing cosmetically what their face looks like to be attractive to men. And as you say, you know, the irony is that the most attractive qualities to men are when women are really in that radiant goddess energy. And what does that mean energetically? You know, it means that the woman is embodied, that she loves herself, that, you know, she's in her own beingness, not trying to be something artificial, you know. So many ironies, aren't there, to the way we try to gain connection and approval.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I really appreciate you bringing this subject up, because we can get so stuck in the external appearance, which like it plays a part. Of course it plays a part. It's another part of like our divine nature is that we're humans. We have bodies, like they have external outward expressions, like, but like radiance is an energy, this, that feminine energy. It's like it's in the air. It's something we can tune into and plug into, you know. It's a quality, it's a certain quality of being which has nothing to do with how we look.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with how we look. And, you know, like we can work on our face and work on our body and wear all the makeup we want. But if we don't connect to what truly like feels good to us, actually in all aspects of our life, because it's by like making those choices that feel deeply like aligned as well. Like this is like another aspect of pleasure, is that we're choosing what is aligned for us. That radiates, and that's an embodied truth. You know, it's a frequency we're emitting, and nothing can replace that.
And I think
anyone can access it.
Yeah. And I think in a world where women have historically for thousands of years now felt very unsafe in their bodies, unsafe in the world, you know, so many women have suffered from unwanted touch, unwanted sexual interactions, you know, even from their partners, you know, that so a lot of women are in this kind of shutdown mode around the body because it's like not very safe. It doesn't feel very safe to really open up the energy body. And so having this clear, let's say, inner masculine that gives those boundaries, it's like, again, it's almost like it's an oxymoron, isn't it? Because it's like an expanded energy that is also very boundaried, you know, and it's when we get that duality piece right, then it's safe to drop into the body.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Like the boundaries is like, boundaries is an integral part to like, not just life, but like specifically my work and sacred sexuality. It's like, there is no way we can give like our true, juicy, aligned, like, yes, like, you know, this orgasmic, like, yes, like I want that. Like we can't truly give that without being able to like know that we can give our no.
Yeah.
It's how do I drop into like the softest openness, like most relaxed part of me that's like ready to experience pleasure, to feel safe enough to do that. I've got to know that like I'm there protecting myself and able to be like, no. Like, here's where I'm a no. Like, here's where I'm not going. Here's where we're not going.
Yeah.
And I can hold that. I know I can hold that. And then it's like within the framework of that, it's like, yeah. Like I can
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this conversation is helping me to realize, you know, it's a vast topic, isn't it? The goddess, it's a vast topic. We've kind of touched on the inner child work, the deconditioning, the de-armoring, the breath work, dance, you know, the boundaries thing, the tantra work, you know, there's so much to unpack. But I guess this morning I just wanted to kind of at least initiate a conversation with you about the goddess, and who knows where it might go. You know, it feels like we could probably expand on this topic. But before we kind of bring it to a close, just mindful, I want it to be a reasonable amount of time for people to tune in. Are there any other things, little tips for women to just begin to tap in a little bit more to this energy in themselves? I know you've talked about some of them already, the dance, the breath work.
Yeah, like tips. Yeah, we've got to start listening to ourselves. We've got to just really, really listen. Like, we need to give ourselves whatever we need to be able to like listen to what's going on. And like, there are practices, you know, I can give practices. We've spoken about the breath work, dance, all these things, but it all comes down to like this awareness of what's happening inside of us, this connection to ourself. So really, like, however that might look, you know, however that might look, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's going for walks, like, you know, whatever that means. And then there's like connecting to pleasure. That is like, you know, like the thing of like eating delicious food is it's great, and I love food and I love eating, but we're really like, this is about like this deeper, it's like about a much deeper pleasure. So like tuning into what really would feel good in our lives. Like, what choices can we make that would feel really good? And like, sometimes that means like canceling plans, or like, I don't know, choosing to sleep in for an extra hour and like giving ourselves permission to do that, or like giving ourselves permission to like, not always sit so straight, you know, and to just like, like let our bodies like relax for a second.
Letting go.
Yeah, exactly. Like just like tuning into these subtle moment by moment places where we can like let go of the holding on and like be something, but actually like tuning into like what do we really want, and like giving ourselves that like permission.
Yeah, and I think like another thing that's been really powerful for me is just really coming away from electronics as much as possible now, and, you know, just minimizing that screen time and relearning how to be in the silence with myself, you know, because technology has meant that if we want to, we can have distraction in our earpieces like 24 hours a day. You know, there are so many invitations to be distracted from ourselves. It's unbelievable. So to actually choose to go in is a discipline, right? But what I find is, for example, if I take a long bath, you know, and I say, right, I'm not taking a book, I'm not taking any devices, I'm not listening to any podcasts, I'm just going to be in the bath with myself. And for me, that is where so many downloads come through. A few days ago, a fairy tale came through for me to write about the goddess, the badass, and the boss in the using this mermaid character called Aurora. That, you know, I was just astounded because I thought, gosh, I've never had a story reveal itself to me before. And it was just such a stark reminder that like Great Spirit needs us to create that space internally to drop these things into our channels, which we are supposed to give out to the world. So it's about being in service to the world as well, to go into the goddess for me.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And like meditation. I come from a strong meditation background, and it is like, it's really essential. Yeah, we've got to create that space. You're so right.
Thank you so much, Tamar. Such a pleasure to talk to a real life goddess. And I just love how you embody it, and I really hope other people see and feel that from you. And when I share this video in the group, I'll tag you, so if anybody wants to like follow Tamar, find out a little bit more about what you do, then that opportunity is there as well. And thank you, it's been really fascinating.
Thank you so much, Laura.
You're listening to the Embodied Mystic Podcast. Thank you for being here and for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that it could serve you in some way. I'd love to hear from you. My inbox is always open. Let me know what spoke to you in this episode, and if there was a moment that lit you up or brought you into deeper self-reflection. If you loved this episode, I'd be super grateful if you took a moment to leave a review or share with a friend. You can do this easily by visiting the link in the show notes. It's been a real pleasure connecting with you today, and I'll see you soon.